And now that you become, when you start receiving guidance from the Qur'an, you start getting connected to the Qur'an, then now you'll learn to ask Allah properly. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. Whenever my slave asks you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, then I'm near. Allah is closest to us in what month? Ramadan. Allah is close to us all the time. We're closest to Him in Ramadan. I say it the other way. When do we ask Allah more? In Ramadan. Shaitan's gone, distractions are gone, taqwa is building. We're asking Allah. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. Then tell Him, I'm near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ. I respond to the call of the one who calls. إِذَا دَعَانِ. Whenever He calls. Well, it's so beautiful that Allah says that. I told you important people, you remember them, they don't remember you. You remember that? Important people, you call them, they don't call you. You know that? You call them, they don't call you back. You say, Shaykh, I left you a voicemail. Yeah, join the club. I have 3,000 voicemails. Ustad, I sent you an email, I didn't hear an answer. Sorry. You send someone a message, you don't get an answer back. Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about Himself. Call me anytime. What will I do? Ujibu da'wat ad-da'i. I respond to the call of the caller, إِذَا دَعَانِ, whenever he calls. Day, night. Is this an appropriate time? Yes, it is. When you call someone important, you worry, is this the right time? Are they going to be angry if I call them right now? Are they going to be too busy for me? Allah says, whenever you call. It's so beautiful. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Then they should try to respond to me too. Then they should. Lam al-amr here. They should try to respond. Not respond, try to respond. Allah said, Ujibu, I respond completely. But when it came to us, He didn't say, Fal yujibu, then they should respond. He said they should try to respond at least to me. Wal yu'minu bi, and they should believe in me. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, so they can be set straight. So they can be put in the right direction. We'll conclude our dars for the day here, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim, wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي فالحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Inshallah, we're continuing, and before we pick up from where we left off, there are some things that I thought should be mentioned that I didn't mention before, and they also have to do with the coherence and the flow of ideas in the surah. If you go a little bit further back, we were in Ayatul Bir, in ayah number 177, we talked about the comprehensive concept of goodness. And right after that, at the end of that discussion, when Allah Azza wa Jal, balanced concepts of ethics with concepts of Sharia law, of us committing ourselves to the laws of Islam. At the end of all of that, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ الْمُتَّقُونَ. Those are the ones that have confirmed the truth, and those are in fact the people of taqwa. The same term that was used in the beginning of this surah, this book is guidance for the people that possess taqwa, those who actually in fact protect themselves. That is at the individual level. If you look at the beginning of this ayah, it talks about iman, which is a very individual concern. Then after that, you have the next stage, وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ. All of that essentially is an individual concern, giving your money against your love of money. Then after that, we switch over again further, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ, salat and zakat, which are in some sense collective affairs, but in the essence of them, they're individual responsibilities. Then وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَهَدُوا, the fulfilling of promises if and when they're made. And by the way, there are some expressions in the Qur'an that summarize the entire deen. Right? There's very, very few statements, very small statements that capture the essence of the entire religion. And this is one of those statements, وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَهَدُوا, and those who fulfill their promises if and when they make them. Essentially, Islam is a promise and agreement between us and Allah, between us and the Messenger, between ourselves and the book. So it's an extension of all of our responsibilities in the religion captured in one very comprehensive statement. Nonetheless, moving along with صَابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. In the end, sabr is a very individual test. You could be standing in the battlefield with 1,000 other soldiers, but your sabr is being tested individually. And where you stand, where your heart is, may not be where the person next to you, their heart is. So the same thing we see actually manifest itself in the Battle of Uhud, and then later we're going to read about that in Ali Imran, and then we're going to read about that some more in Surah Al-Ahzab eventually when we get there. You know how there were people in Medina who's they're physically next to each other, but their hearts are in different places. So their level of sabr is in different places. Anyhow, overall, this concept of goodness, of al-birr, and finally attaining taqwa, being people of taqwa, this is an individual matter. But the taqwa of an individual, and again I'll remind you, taqwa is not the same as goodness. Taqwa is the act of protecting oneself, taking precaution to protect oneself. That effort for an individual is different, and that same effort for a society is different. The way a society protects itself, preserves its peace, preserves its harmony is something else. The way an individual preserves his or her harmony is something else. Ayatul Bir is about the individual preserving their harmony, the individual protecting themselves from the wrath of Allah, from the displeasure of Allah. But then Allah immediately switches over, because this deen is constantly a balance between the individual and the collective. He goes to the farthest extreme of the collective, and that is all society altogether. And in a society altogether, the thing that can create chaos the worst thing that can create chaos is murder. It's the worst thing that can create chaos. So Allah Azza wa Jalla addresses that which can destroy social harmony, societal harmony next. The first thing was, these are the citizens. If the citizens are good, you won't have to have that kind of precaution. If the citizens are people of birr. But then immediately after that, Allah talks about, al-qisas fil qatla. What kind of people would engage in murder anyway? The people that have no good in them. Especially the kind of murder that's being talked about here, unjustifiable murder. Not just killing in the battlefield, or with due cause with due process, but just unjustifiable murder. So then at the end of that conversation, 2 ayat dedicated to that, and Allah says once again, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And in qisas also, in taking vengeance for murderers, there's also life for you so that you can have taqwa. Here you can have taqwa as a society. You can protect yourself as a society if you implement a law of qisas. I mentioned this before, that at the individual level, it is actually preferred for us to forgive. Allah encourages us to forgive at the individual level. But at the societal level, if a society becomes all too forgiving, then criminals get a free pass. And it can create chaos in society, that society can't protect itself from criminal behavior. So this taqwa is at the collective level. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Now Allah has taken this conversation from the individual to the furthest extents of the collective. But there's a level in between, and it's, for those of you who study even a little bit of sociology, know about this. So there's individual, there's communal, but in between there's familial relations, family relations, right? So when we talk about community, that's a larger collection of humanity, the children of Adam alayhi salam. That's the biggest collective. But before that is our own family. That's the more immediate connections human beings share with each other. And within that connection, what can disrupt harmony is death. And interestingly, the transition is someone got killed, obviously, now you have to deal with, they died. How do you deal with their inheritance? So logically, the next thing mentioned also is inheritance law. Because obviously death is mentioned right before, someone being killed is mentioned right before. But in addition to that, what can disrupt the harmony of a family? One of the worst things that can disrupt the harmony of a family is the death of someone who is holding the family together. All the brothers, they're in touch with each other because the mother's still around. The mother passes away and the brothers drift apart. Or the father, he was holding everybody together, everybody lived in the same household. The father dies, now there's a fight about who gets what. And all the brothers are hiring their own lawyer, and things are getting ugly. Right? Inheritance can really create disruption inside a society and disputes in a society where otherwise there was harmony. So the next item underneath that is now familial disruption. And that is, and the worst case scenario of that is inheritance. And when there's injustice in inheritance, and we read about that. Then finally we come back to the individual. It took this long journey, collective, then semi-collective, family affairs. And then finally back to the individual. What is the matter of the individual? Well, the ayah before, where this conversation began, goodness is attained by those who have taqwa. Well, how can you start your journey to get on the road to getting taqwa? كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And by the way, even in an inheritance law, Allah says, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. This will be a right on the people who have taqwa. So the conversation of taqwa never went. It stayed. The first discussion was about taqwa, of being conscious of Allah and aware of Allah, then at the collective level, then at the family level, and then back again eventually at the individual level in the form of the discussion on fasting. Now we're still in the discussions on fasting, but I wanted to make mention of something very, very important. The word sawm was used, siyam. You know, there are other words used in Arabic for fasting too. And later on, inshallah ta'ala, when we get to those ayat, we'll see other words for fasting also. But this word in particular was used by the Arabs before Islam for a very interesting purpose. And I didn't mention that before. It was used when they trained their horses to go into battle. That's when sawm was used. You know, the camel it's created for the desert environment. It can survive a long time in the desert. It can have a little bit of water, or it's got reservoirs of water inside of it, so it can, journey the entire way without water. Horses aren't built like that. And of course, you can't take the camel into the battlefield. It's not as strategically advantageous because it's slow. And it can't get away and it can't attack quickly enough. So the horses are the preferred weapon of choice or vehicle of choice in battles. But the problem with horses is they don't last in the heat. They can dehydrate. So the Arabs had a way of training their horses to survive the heat, and they used to call that sawm. The first thing that came in the mind of the old Arabic listener, when they heard sawm, is getting ready for battle. And not getting themselves ready for battle, getting who ready for battle? Their horses. Now Allah says, I have mandated fasting upon you, sawm upon you. The first thought that crosses the mind for the listener is, wait, now I'm the horse. I'm the slave. I'm the owned property like the horse is the owned property. That is under my command when it goes into battle. Now I'm going to be under Allah's command when I go into battle, and I need training too. And this is sawm also. Which is interesting because these ayat are right before, these are precursors to the battle of Badr. And so the believers are actually being mentally prepared also for battle, for tough times, through the ayat of fasting. In addition to all of the other benefits and blessings of fasting, it's actually tied to a larger mission in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so having said that, inshallah ta'ala, we go on from where we left off, and I'll repeat the ayah again. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When my slave asks you about me, إِذَا, which means when it comes with a past tense, it still means future tense. That's an important consideration in Arabic. إِذْ and إِذَا. إِذْ means when also. إِذَا means when also. But إِذْ necessarily pushes the meaning to the past. And إِذَا, regardless of what tense comes after it, pushes the meaning to the future. You know how I say, when I went there? When I went there? You use the word when, but you're referring to the past. When you say, when I go there, you're saying the same when, same word, spelled the same way, but it's referring to the future. So when it's referring to the future, the word إِذَا is used. إِذَا. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. When my slaves ask you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Then certainly, for sure, I am near. And this is important because it's not just as a matter of dua, like when we make dua that Allah Azza wa Jalla is near. But the slaves ask Allah about Allah all the time, about all kinds of things, and the first thing Allah tells in response is, I am near. The slave didn't ask, where is Allah? Is he far or near? Aina. He said, Aina ana. He said, Anni. He just asked anything about me. They ask all kinds of questions about Allah. What does Allah want? What does He want us to do? What's halal and what's haram? What's the best deeds we can do? And the comprehensive response to all of those questions is, Allah is definitely near. Tell Him I am definitely close. Why? Because that's the one thing a believer will need to hold on to that lesson that Allah has been teaching in the previous ayat, and that lesson is taqwa. That lesson is taqwa. So before we go on, let's understand that with the means of a very simple example. If you're about to do something wrong, even at the minutest scale, you're about to say something obnoxious to a friend of yours in the recess room over here. You're about to say something dumb. And somebody says, hey, Ustad can hear you. He's right there. He's right behind the door. What would happen to you immediately? You'd stop. Like, oh, I was just making dua for her. You'd change your tone. Yo, watch out, he's coming. It happens, doesn't it? It happens with an employer. You so much as think his shadows walk by, and your tone changes. The way you work changes. The alt tab is right at your disposal. So you go back to the safe window, right? That happens. This is a form of taqwa, knowing that the authority is near. Now, when you think the authority is far, then what happens? Free reign. He's in a meeting right now. All the way on the other end of town. Oh, this is good. Now you got free time. Allah says about Himself, the thing that will make you remember taqwa and implement taqwa is constantly remembering that no doubt about it, Allah is near. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. On the one hand, that makes us afraid of Allah. But also, on the other hand, Him being close is an opportunity. Because when someone is close, you're in a better position to be able to talk to them. You're in a better position to be able to converse with them, communicate with them. So Allah changes that first factor of this being scary to something of an opportunity. And He says, أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond. And ajaba yujibu in Arabic from if'al means to respond immediately. That's awesome. The word means to respond immediately. إِذَا دَعَانِ. If and when He calls me. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Then they should try to respond to me. Then they should at least make an attempt to answer my demands also. وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. And they should believe in me. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And here they should believe in me also implies they should trust me. In other words, when they make dua, they should actually believe that I'm listening. They should actually believe that I got it. And I understand what they're going through. So that they may be set straight.